The question of can science explain miracles is not an effort to explain them away by providing a naturalistic explanation. Rather, in this case, it is dealing with the question of how they might actually happen. That is a completely different question, and one that is often not asked. Trying to explain miracles away is actually presuming that they are not real. It usually involves either seeking a naturalistic explanation for what happened or denying that anything happened at all. When dealing with miracles from the past, such as the resurrection of Jesus, a denial that they occurred at all is the most common way of explaining away miracles. In fact, the most common argument against miracles refers to them as magic. This is, of course, nothing but an attempt to simply dismiss that anything actually happened. What we are exploring here is how science can offer a potential mechanism that allows miracles to occur. As a result, we will be exploring a possible mechanism that is fully consistent with existing physics. If all we had in physics was classical physics with its totally mechanistic nature, calling miracles magic would tend to make sense. After all, they would require somehow breaking this mechanistic nature of reality. Consequently, seeing miracles as magic, whether you believe in them or not, would make a lot of sense. In fact, the insistence of philosophical naturalism being used in science is a complete denial of the possibility that miracles got its start during the era of classical mechanics. In a way, a naturalistic and inherently atheistic view of reality is at least in part a result of only having classical mechanics to work with. This extends naturally from the mechanistic nature of classical mechanics. However, classical mechanics is not all that we have, but we also have quantum mechanics, which changes the picture of reality completely. It does so by ending the idea of a purely mechanistic and materialistic nature behind reality. One of the things that quantum mechanics ultimately does is end the idea of a purely mechanistic reality. This is because, unlike classical mechanics, it is inherently probabilistic rather than mechanistic. This is because particle wave behavior on quantum levels is not mechanistic but probabilistic, with our knowledge actually influencing the results. This at once ends mechanistic arguments against both the idea of free will and miracles. The fact that our knowledge influences the results has been demonstrated by quantum erasure experiments, where whether or not we know the path of a particle determines whether or not it behaves like a particle and going through one slit, or a wave by interfering with itself from going through both slits. When analyzed in detail, the conclusion that can best be drawn from quantum mechanics is reality is fundamentally information. This means that at its most fundamental level we live in what can be considered a virtual reality rather than a materialistic one. This opens up many possibilities the materialism rejects before ever looking at any data. In fact, once the idea that our reality is fundamentally an information system, as suggested by quantum mechanics, is considered, the mechanism by which miracles can occur clearly presents itself. This mechanism is simply that a miracle is an act of God changing the information in the system, altering what is happening. In other words, a miracle ends up being a change in the information behind our reality that changes that reality. It makes the mechanism of miracles similar to a programmer momentarily tweaking a program such as a game to get a particular effect. With God as the programmer and operator of the system, it is reasonable that he would be able to make changes in it when he wants to. Such changes from our perspective would be miracles, because they do not operate according to the regular laws of nature. In fact, they may even operate in manners contrary to the laws of nature. For example, parting the Red Sea could not just occur by blowing a strong wind across it. However, God was temporarily tweaking the rules to keep the water back until it was time to release it. What this shows is that miracles are consistent with the laws of physics, even if they are not operating within the normal rules by which physics operates. There are likely to be those that object to any contemplation to how miracles work. After all, in their thinking doing, so might diminish God's power in their minds. However, it is logical to consider that miracles would have some form of mechanism behind them. Furthermore, it is not unreasonable that we should be able to figure out that basic mechanism as we learn more about how reality works. Figuring out the basic process does not diminish God's power or majesty one single bit. After all, it does not mean that we could ever fully understand or manipulate the system ourselves. As a consequence, understanding the basics behind how miracles work does not diminish God's power. After all, He is still operating well beyond everything we understand. All figuring out the basic process does is eliminates excuses for not accepting what the Bible says about miracles occurring. The other form of objection comes from those who want to dismiss miracles entirely, opening the door not only to the possibility that miracles are possible, but that they have a scientifically viable mechanism is an affront to atheists and those that are theologically liberal as well. Consequently, they will not object to including any such things in science. After all, getting rid of God and miraculous is the entire purpose of science in their mindset. This approach has the advantage that it does answer the big objection frequently touted by atheists that God is nothing but a magical sky daddy. This is because it clearly indicates that miracles are not magic, but temporary alterations in the programming necessary for the universe to operate on a regular basis as it does. Miracles are simply cases where God temporarily intervenes in the regular operation for a particular purpose. The specific details may be beyond our understanding because we cannot study a particular event directly, but it doesn't make it magic, suggesting that miracles work because our universe is an information system and programmed and operated by God, and they occur when He changes the information for a particular purpose, only helps the biblical case for miracles while eliminating the atheistic charge of magic. In conclusion, quantum mechanics does provide a possible way of explaining the way that miracles work. It does so by changing the process from magic to programming. This does not diminish the power and majesty of God any. It simply provides a glimpse at how the process works. This glimpse is on a relatively simple level, but it provides a way the miracle can be scientifically understood to operate.